Elena Saxon had never met a story she couldn't crack with logic and facts. An investigative journalist by trade, she was known for her rigorous scrutiny and knack for ferreting out the truth. Whenever whispers of miracles surfaced, she arrived on the scene with a magnifying glass for methodical detail and a loudspeaker for challenging sensational claims. So when rumors emerged of strange goings-on in a tiny tucked-away village, she jumped at the chance to separate fact from fiction. She had tried multiple times to reassure her editor and herself if there was a rational explanation, she would find it. No one, she believed, could hide the truth from her. She drove for hours from the city, first on the highway, then onto progressively smaller roads that curled through rolling hills and farms. By late afternoon, a dirt path led her to the heart of the village. It reminded her of a watercolor painting, modest houses with green shutters and stone chimneys, mossy walls, and narrow cobblestone lanes. The bustle of her city life became a faded memory in that moment, supplanted by the soothing hush unique to places that seemed forgotten by time. A wooden sign read, "Welcome to Redwood Vale." It hardly looked like the site of wondrous happenings. She studied the scenery with the scrutiny she usually reserved for investigating a suspicious alibi, but no bizarre lights appeared in the sky, no intangible aura hovered over the quiet roofs. A gentle breeze rustled the ancient oaks, and that, for the moment, was the only magic to be found. Her lodging, a modest stone cottage rented from an elderly woman, Mrs. Sparrow, sat at the outskirts of Redwood Vale. As Elena parked her car, Mrs. Sparrow emerged with an eager wave of her hand. Tiny yet spry, she bustled over with surprising speed and offered to help Elena with her suitcase. Elena gently refused the help, mindful not to insinuate that the older woman couldn't manage. Mrs. Sparrow simply beamed at her. Her hair, tied in a loose bun, glimmered with strands of silver, and her eyes looked cartoonishly large behind thick, round glasses. She guided Elena inside. Set behind a weathered oak door, the cottage felt cozy yet unassuming. The walls were lined with carefully arranged books, poetry, local history, and romance novels that had evidently been well thumbed. Newspapers and magazines were stacked on a small round table beneath the window. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, illuminating swirling dust motes in the air. The single bedroom was painted a cheerful pale yellow, decorated with an array of potted plants, basil, mint, and rosemary, that lent the space a fresh, earthy scent. Mrs. Sparrow had left a thick quilt folded over the bed, and a vase full of wildflowers stood on the dresser. "Thank you. It's lovely," Elena said with professional politeness, though she had never stayed anywhere quite like it. She placed her camera bag carefully next to her suitcase. Her laptop weighed heavily on her shoulder, symbolic of her resolute commitment to gather evidence. Mrs. Sparrow, a patient smile on her face, stood in the doorway. "I brought some apple pie, dear," she said, proffering a tin wrapped in cloth. "And from my orchard, I heard you had come to investigate our miracles." Elena stiffened. Villagers were typically wary of her profession, so such a forthright mention of her assignment surprised her. She took the apple pie just the same, inhaling the sweet, cinnamon-laced aroma. "That's very kind of you," she said, unsure how much to reveal. "I wouldn't call it investigating miracles, more so confirming what's really going on here." "Of course," Mrs. Sparrow replied. "Well, you just let me know if you have any questions. We're simple folk around here, but Redwood Vale is an extraordinary place." Then she winked and headed outside, quietly closing the door in her wake. Alone, Alina exhaled and considered the nature of the rumors she'd been following for weeks. Occasional feats, a toddler who, according to a local rumor, had survived a night in the frigid woods unscathed, adults who supposedly made full recoveries from dire illnesses, an orchard that somehow produced fruit well into winter. The tales varied, but they all ended with the same breathless assertion. Redwood Vale had a power about it, something intangible and miraculous. Aliena had already turned the story over in her head. It was likely just a combination of rural folklore and charitable neighbors who took care of each other. Nevertheless, she flicked open her laptop. She needed to write notes for the article's structure. Time to find a lead, gather testimonies, and track down verifiable evidence. She wrote, 1. Interview locals, clinic, orchard owners, etc. 2. Investigate known miracles with official records. 3. Document environment, photos, samples. 4. Draw a conclusion. A neat, efficient list, just the way she liked it. The next morning, the sun's first rays painted the horizon a gentle pink as Elena hurried out of the cottage. She was determined to find the main figures attached to the stories. A post office doubled as a tiny library in Redwood Vale, and it was rumored to be the hub of local news. Inside, the postmaster, a graying man named Henry Whitaker, greeted her with a warm grin. He busied himself sorting mail into cubbyholes and offered Elena a mug of coffee. The coffee's aroma was robust, comforting in the crisp morning air. "Early riser, aren't you?" Henry remarked. Elena sipped the coffee, relishing its warmth. "I try to be. I'm hoping to learn more about Redwood Vale's special occurrences. Thought you might know a thing or two." He lifted an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "Looking for miracles, I take it?" Without waiting for her response, he handed her a newspaper. "Might help to read local news from the last few months." She glanced through the thin publication. The headlines were modest. "Cake Bake-Off a Success. Community Garden Yields Bumper Crop. Sheriff's Daughter Wins Spelling Bee." Nothing overtly miraculous jumped off the page. Then her attention snagged on a tiny notice tucked in the corner. "Another thank you to the Vale. My pappy recovered from pneumonia at the old clinic. Redwood Vale surprises us again." She glanced at Henry, who simply shrugged. "Anyone else might just say he got lucky," Henry said. "But his family believes Redwood Vale worked a special cure." He rubbed the scruff on his chin. "We're not ones to argue. We like to believe that miracles live in everyday kindness, too. But if you want details, I'd talk to our local nurse, Harriet." He gave her directions, which involved turning at a giant oak and heading past the blacksmith's shop. Elena followed his instructions. Midway, she heard giggles from children running around a tall oak that, from a distance, almost resembled a watchful guardian. She found the blacksmith hammering a horseshoe while a horse waited patiently. Past that, on the outskirts of the village, a modest stucco building sported a wooden sign, Redwood Vale Clinic. She stepped inside to the gentle hum of overhead lights in the silent hallway. A plump woman with curly hair and bright, curious eyes soon emerged. "Good morning," she said. "Name's Harriet. Are you feeling ill?" She appeared genuinely concerned. "No, I'm fine," said Elena, reaching for the small notebook in her pocket. "I'm Elena Saxon, a reporter. I heard someone recovered incredibly fast here from pneumonia. I wanted to see if you had any context." Harriet nodded and guided Elena into a small office lined with medical textbooks. "You're talking about old Mr. Thompson. He's strong as a horse these days, and you think it was miraculous?" Harriet laughed, a tingling sound like wind chimes. "I don't believe in magic potions, but I do believe in compassion and a bit of luck. See, Redwood Vale's nature offers a calm that helps people heal emotionally and sometimes physically. Also, the neighbors all pitched in. One brought healthy soups, another sat by his bedside to read him stories, his granddaughter played him music on her violin. He was never alone." Elena leaned forward. "You're saying community support made the difference?" "That's my belief," Harriet replied. "But who is to say? Maybe Redwood Vale is a special place, or maybe we just know how to care for one another. Either way, folks around here call that a miracle in itself." Elena scribbled notes, wanting something concrete. She'd come hoping for claims of supernatural cures, but Harriet's words were warm and practical. She asked to see Mr. Thompson's medical record, but Harriet politely explained confidentiality laws. They parted ways on friendly terms. Frustration rippled through Elena. If Redwood Vale's miracles amounted to neighbors bringing soup, she'd wasted her editor's time. But she knew tabloids had latched onto Redwood Vale's reputation, so perhaps there were more sensational events. What about the orchard with fruit in winter? Elena's research insisted Redwood Vale had recorded harvests long after other regions fell quiet under snow. That afternoon, she headed uphill to where Henry Whitaker said a man named Gervais ran an orchard near the top of the valley. The path wound between tall pine trees. When she finally arrived, she found neat rows of apple trees, their limbs heavy with ripening fruit that rustled in a soft breeze. It was late autumn, edging toward the start of winter, and Elena expected most apple harvests would have ended weeks ago. Yet here, the orchard seemed radiant with color. Gervais was a wiry fellow with a sun-leathered face. He greeted Elena with a firm handshake. "You want to see the orchard, do you?" he said, a mischievous gleam in his eye. "Let me guess. The city folk want to know how I get apples this late," Elena nodded. "I heard it's unnatural. Some call it miraculous, but maybe you have special fertilizers or greenhouse techniques?" He barked a laugh. "Fertilizers and greenhouses? No, no. I just pay attention to the land, to the weather. Redwood Vale has mild temperatures year-round because the valley's protected from harsh winds by the mountains. Plus, there's a warm natural spring that flows beneath a part of the orchard. It keeps the soil from freezing too soon. Nothing supernatural about it." Elena scribbled this down. "That explains extended harvests. People have been calling it a miracle, though." He nodded thoughtfully. "People like to attach big words to things they can't immediately explain. I just think Redwood Vale is blessed by nature. It's a gift, for sure, but it's not like an angel came down to bless the orchard." As Elena took photos, she couldn't help noticing the orchard's enchanting stillness. The late afternoon sun bathed the leaves in gold, and a soft hush filled the spaces between trees. Gervais offered her a crisp apple. She bit into it, tasting honey-sweet juice. A small thing, but so unexpectedly delicious that she paused, momentarily lost to the simple delight. That night, as she returned to her cottage, the hush of Redwood Vale felt less alien. Her brain sifted the day's findings. Mr. Thompson's recovery might boil down to community support. The orchard's winter fruit was likely a product of geographical specifics. What was the extraordinary phenomenon behind the rumors? On her third day, Elena decided to track down more stories. She learned of a family who claimed their lost toddler had been found in perfect health after a freezing night outdoors. The mother, a shy woman named Cora, welcomed Elena into her snug home. A little boy, presumably the child in question, played contentedly with wooden blocks by the fireplace. Cora offered Elena a seat on a patchwork sofa. "I was beside myself," she said, voice trembling as she relived the memory. "Toby wandered off at dusk. We searched all night, but no one could find him. By dawn, we feared the worst. Then we found him calmly asleep beneath the big oak near the stream. He wasn't so much as shivering. The physician said it was a wonder his body temperature hadn't dropped further." Elena looked at the boy's cherubic face. The logic-centered part of her mind tried to reason. Perhaps the night hadn't been as cold as the villagers recalled, or the child had found some sort of shelter. "You think Redwood Vale kept him safe?" Cora's eyes shone with tears. "I do. People here have all sorts of stories of Redwood Vale stepping in when you need it most. Maybe it's just the way the land sits, how the wind pockets swirl. Maybe it's the spirits of the forest," she said, smiling a little. "I don't know, but I believe it was nothing short of a miracle." After leaving Cora's home, Elena strolled aimlessly, her thoughts a restless tide. This place baffled her. She could piece together plausible explanations for each peculiar event, yet the villagers wholeheartedly believed Redwood Vale itself offered miraculous solace. Rationally, she couldn't accept the notion of protective forest spirits, and yet she felt drawn to Redwood Vale's hush. Something intangible beckoned her to slow down, to observe, to be present in each moment. She wondered if the rumored miracle was not about flashy acts of nature, but about a quiet shift in the human spirit. Later, Elena found herself in the village tavern, a cozy, timber-framed establishment. She settled onto a stool at the worn wooden counter, commanding a view of the local crowd. A kindly bartender named Marshall served her a steaming bowl of vegetable soup and homemade bread. Over the meal, she asked him point-blank about this miraculous reputation. Marshall brewed a pot of herbal tea, pondering her questions. "I've lived here all my life. I've seen Redwood Vale get stories blown out of proportion," he began, placing a mug in front of her. "But I don't see these happenings as illusions. If a small boy is found safe after a long night, I'd call that a wonder. Maybe not in the biblical sense, but it's still pretty marvelous. We live in a jaded world. If Redwood Vale reminds us that good things can and do happen, I reckon that's miracle enough for us. Elena chased soggy bread crusts around her soup bowl, at a momentary loss for words. She cast her mind back to her life in the city, where she'd become so accustomed to deadlines, data, and cynicism. She'd always wanted to strip illusions from facts to present a crisp, clear narrative. Now, however, Redwood Vale presented a separate truth that sometimes simply believing in the good could provide a kind of magic in people's lives. On day 4, an unexpected event returned Elena's journalist instincts to sharp focus. A frantic knock rattled her cottage door. Throwing it open, she discovered a breathless farmer named Joan. Joan barely got the words out between gasps. Mrs. Sparrow's orchard collapsed while she was out walking, pinned under a branch. We can't lift it alone. Hurry. Elena barely had time to slip on a coat, boots, and gloves before sprinting with Joan the half-mile to Mrs. Sparrow's orchard. Wind whipped through the valley, and the late autumn sky had turned bruise-gray. There, near the edge of a line of apple trees, she spotted a broken limb the size of a small trunk, pressing down on something. A shape in a purple cardigan. Mrs. Sparrow? Elena's heart pounded. She dropped to her knees in the mud as villagers rushed to assist, lifting the branch in unison. Through the chaos, Elena saw Harriet, the nurse, kneeling by Mrs. Sparrow, checking her pulse, shouting instructions. Freed from the branch, Mrs. Sparrow murmured in pain. Her leg looked twisted at an unnatural angle, pinned for who knew how long. Harriet had to stabilize her quickly. Amid the tension, Elena realized her role. Harriet needed help applying a makeshift splint. Elena found straight pieces of broken wood. Harriet wrapped them against Mrs. Sparrow's leg. The rain started in icy droplets, but the villagers formed a human shield around the injured woman. When Harriet said they had to transport her to the clinic, the group organized quickly. Village men carefully lifted Mrs. Sparrow onto an improvised stretcher. As they moved, Elena cradled Mrs. Sparrow's hand. The older woman's eyes fluttered, then opened. Despite the pain etched onto her features, Mrs. Sparrow managed the barest smile. "Elena, dear," she whispered, as though it was a blessing to see the journalist's face. "Everything will be all right. Redwood Vale always sees us through." Elena squeezed the woman's fingers. She wanted to assure Mrs. Sparrow that she would be fine, but words snagged in her throat. The swirl of worry, the sense of communal urgency, none of it felt contrived or rationalized away. It felt deeply human and yet transcendent, like a collective vow that no one in Redwood Vale would suffer alone. They carried Mrs. Sparrow to the clinic, stethoscopes and sympathy merging to create a flurry of action. Harriet's face was resolute, her voice calm as she directed the chaotic group of volunteers. "We'll get her stable, get x-rays, and treat her accordingly," she told Elena. The journalist nodded, stepping aside to let Harriet work. It was near midnight when the chaos subsided. Harriet emerged from the examination room, unfastening her gloves. "We've done a temporary fix. She'll need surgery in the city to mend that leg, unfortunately," Harriet remarked. "But she's stable. It's a miracle we found her when we did." Elena folded her arms, grateful. "Thank you," she whispered. "If we had been minutes later—" Harriet nodded solemnly. "A stroke of good fortune. Joan arrived at your door. Elena offered to remain at the clinic. Harriet insisted that she go home and rest." So, in the quiet hours of the night, Elena headed back through the empty streets. Lamps glowed faintly in windows, and somewhere she heard an owl's low hoot. She paused, staring at the huge oak near the main road, a silent sentinel under the moonlight. In that moment, the hush felt charged. Her breath came in shallow puffs of steam in the chilly air, but an inexplicable warmth blossomed in her chest. She realized with a start that Redwood Vale hadn't revealed to her spectacle-laden wonders, no angels in the orchard, no shimmering apparitions. Instead, it held a sort of everyday grace that coursed through its soil and its people. The stories might have expanded in retelling, yet at their core lay simple truths. Neighbors found lost children, cared for the sick, and believed in the best. She thought about how that intangible force kept the orchard fruitful, how Harriet showed unwavering kindness, and how Mrs. Sparrow trusted Redwood Vale's timeless comfort. These were not miracles in the literal sense. They were glimpses of extraordinary humanity, sustained by an environment that nurtured hope. And hope itself, Alina thought, was the spark that let people survive episodes like that orchard accident. The next morning, Alina woke to a phone call from her editor. He wanted an update. So, what's the scoop? Are we talking real miracles or just tall tales? He asked, half joking, half urgent. Alina hesitated. For the first time in her career, she was unsure how to package a story. It's both, she replied, stepping outside the cottage. She took in the view of the surrounding valley. I mean, there isn't supernatural proof, at least nothing you can measure, but Redwood Vale has a sense of, well, of wonder. People look out for each other. There's an orchard that keeps producing late fruit, but there's a reasonable explanation for it. A boy survived a cold night, but maybe he got lucky. Another man recovered from pneumonia, but the villagers nursed him ceaselessly. None of it screams miracle in a biblical sense, and yet it feels miraculous in a quieter way. Her editor sighed. I can't run an article with a vague sense of spirituality. We need facts, or a strong personal angle. Elena swallowed. I know, I'll figure it out. But even as she said it, she realized Redwood Vale's wonders existed beyond the realm of her usual fact-based reporting. A part of her, newly awakened, felt that perhaps the real story was about the intangible power of goodness. She closed the call, uncertain how to convey Redwood Vale's truth in the typical language of journalism. That day, she helped Harriet arrange transport to the city hospital so Mrs. Sparrow could get the surgery she needed. Before the ambulance left, Mrs. Sparrow insisted on pressing her aged hand over Elena's. Dear girl, she murmured, voice still breathy with painkillers. Don't go chasing after wonders you can't see. Look for the ones you can feel. Her words clung to Elena like morning dew. After that, she spent her time taking long walks through Redwood Vale, camera in hand, capturing moments that exuded a gentle wholesomeness, children sharing bread with the neighbor's stray cat, a farmer offering a crate of apples to passers-by, an old couple picking wildflowers by the stream. In these scenes, Elena recognized a pattern of everyday kindness woven so seamlessly into Redwood Vale's identity that outsiders might label it miraculous. In truth, it was the power of collective compassion. On Elena's last full day in Redwood Vale, she climbed a small knoll overlooking the entire valley. The sun was dropping behind the forested mountains, painting the sky in lavender and tangerine. Overhead, swallows dipped and soared. She turned on her camera to film the scene, narrating quietly. When I arrived, I was convinced I would uncover a hoax, or at best, find rational reasons for Redwood Vale's so-called miracles. And in part, I did. I learned how geology, mild climate, and neighbors' devotion explain many of the stories. Yet, in all my digging, I realized that Mapleton or any other place on Earth could do the same if people cared enough. What's different here is a collective willingness to believe that our simplest acts might hold great power. We call them wonders or miracles, but maybe they're not as rare as we think. Redwood Vale encourages us to treasure small acts. A child's survival, an orchard's bounty, a friend's quick instinct to save a neighbor. Miracles, it seems, are less about spectacle than about the everyday acts of love, empathy, and resilience. Maybe Redwood Vale isn't special for its supernatural forces, but for the intangible, luminous hope that each resident carries in their heart. It's more than luck or logic, it's faith in each other. She lowered the camera, feeling the hush of the dusk settle around her. A final note formed in her mind. Redwood Vale's real miracle might be the reminder of beauty found in humility and compassion. That lesson found her cynicism and gently pried it open, letting in light. It wasn't about ignoring facts or evidence. It was about enlarging her understanding of what miracle could mean in a world jaded by negativity. She stayed there until the first stars blinked overhead. When the time came for Elena to leave, she packed her belongings into the compact car. The trunk shut with a sense of finality. A few villagers came to bid her goodbye. Harriet gave her an update on Mrs. Sparrow. The surgery had gone well and she would recover with proper rest. The orchard caretaker, Gervais, pressed a small sack of dried apple slices into her hands for the road. Cora offered a crocheted scarf, explaining it might get chilly on the drive. Each gift was a symbol of Redwood Vale's quiet generosity. Standing by the car, Elena felt a pang of emotion surge in her chest. She had exposed Redwood Vale's rumored miracles to the light of careful scrutiny, anticipating a disappointing reveal. Instead, she had found a deeper magic: unity, kindness, perseverance. Without making a fuss, Redwood Vale reminded her that a miracle could be as simple as a stranger's helping hand in a moment of crisis. It could be the unwavering belief that goodness will triumph. Nobody asked for the spotlight here. They simply lived by these small wonders, day after day. She thanked them profusely, not exactly sure how to express the swirl of gratitude and awe in her chest. Putting the car into gear, she drove slowly down the dirt road, glancing in the rearview mirror to see Harriet and the others waving. Past winding roads, away from Redwood Vale's old oaks and orchard-laden hills, she carried a new perspective on the meaning of miracles. She realized now she'd been searching for the sensational, but it was the gentle wonders, the ones that seemed ordinary, that she truly needed to find all along. Long after she left the village behind, Elena held Redwood Vale in her heart like a warm ember of possibility. In the days and weeks to come, she would share her story, weaving facts and observations with a healthy dash of reverence for the everyday miracles she'd witnessed. Whenever she felt the cold grip of doubt creeping in, she would remember Mrs. Sparrow's calm faith, Harriet's unwavering compassion, the orchard's silent bounty, and a child who woke under an ancient oak. She'd remember a place where neighbors believed fervently in each other's capacity for goodness. And each time, she would feel an inexplicable surge of hope, a quiet marvel that reminded her life could be filled with small miracles, if only one paused to notice them.